The Bill Clark Show, presented by Dr. Pepper. And now, Coach Bill Clark.
Welcome into the Coach Bill Clark Show. Coach Bill Clark, I'm Pat Smith, along with Molly Robinson. Landrum Roberts will be back with us next week. This is the Bill Clark Show, presented by Dr. Pepper and Buffalo Rock and Jimmy Lee and those fine folks over there. Man, they do so much, not only for college football, but for the community of Birmingham.
Yeah, so you got Buffalo Rock, Jimmy Lee. What a great company. You know, goes all the way back to his granddad, all the years in Birmingham, whether we're talking about hospitals or giving back to the community involved, Alabama, Auburn, UAB. Of course, specifically for me, always so great for us. And then what Dr. Pepper does for college football, and you know, as our title sponsor, we sure appreciate them.
So the last couple of weeks on this program, we've kind of gone down memory lane, kind of talking about Coach Bill Clark's career, starting out in high school at Prattville, going to South Alabama, helped establish that program, going to Jacksonville State, very successful at that division. And then you take the leap of faith, you come to Birmingham and UAB. You get the bowl eligible, the program gets shut down. And we've kind of taken the listeners through that process. So the program now, we're to the point to where the program has been brought back. It's been announced.
Yep.
You're in the process now of discussing with the NCAA. And if you would touch on that again, because it's a very important facet of how you put this roster together. Oliver Luck was the number 2 person at the NCAA. Kind of take us down those conversations of what you needed to do, because once you start playing, it's kind of changing every single day now. But back then, once you signed your letter of intent, the clock started for 5 years.
That's right.
I mean, you could have a medical red shirt year,
Yep.
and in some cases you might get an additional red shirt year, but that clock is 5 years once you step foot on that campus. Kind of take us there about developing that roster.
Yeah, so first, when we talked about Conference USA, we could not have done this without those guys. They were glad to have us back. Brent Manowski. Sad thing about Brent Manowski, soon in 16, he ends up going to the College Football Hall of Fame. Not Hall of Fame, College Football Playoff Committee, I'm sorry. And so we lose him. Judy McLeod, who's the number 2, steps up.
Right.
We'll talk about that here in a minute. But we've got Conference USA really excited about us coming back. We have there's no blueprint. What are we going to do? How are we going to play? Well, we need you playing in 17, because if you don't, you know, your other sports, you're not an FBS program, because that's what was going to happen to UAB. UAB thought they were just going to stay in the conference. They're like, no, we don't keep you in this conference if you don't play football. None of the conferences were going to allow that. So then UAB was going to try and be some independent that only played basketball, which is just, doesn't work. So Conference USA is working with us. They don't know. We're going to go meet with Luck and start throwing some things out there. Okay, if we can bring these guys in, what could you give us? Well, we can let you recruit, but we can't give you extra scholarships or you're going to have those scholarships. But the clock being frozen allowed us to at least be able to tell these kids, hey, your clock will not start till 17, so you can get well, you can train, you can work on.
So you could come to campus and you could go through 2 years of workouts.
Yep.
And your clock would not start until you officially started the practice for that season that you're actually going to play.
That's right.
A game.
You would not start till you step on the field for the first games in 17, which we're now told we're going to play in 17. Now, you can imagine every school in America said, hey, I wonder if we could get UAB on the schedule as a win. And we're going to talk about where we were picked out of 130 teams. I think that was pretty obvious where we were going to be picked going into 17. So I've got coaches going around the country. I'm trying to get a full staff of coaches back. It's like, no, we're not going to wait and go with 4 coaches or 6. We're going to get a full staff.
It was 9, right?
Yeah, at that time.
Yes.
And then put GAs. And,
right.
It's like, well, you don't need but 4 right now. No, I need a whole staff. We've got to go recruit. We got to do something about facilities. So probably one of the biggest things we did in there, I start talking about a foundation. What is a foundation? Well, in high school, if you want to think in line of a booster club, that's a booster club that runs outside the school but through the school. This is such a big deal. All our programs have it. So we could go to Alabama with the Red Elephant Club, Tigers Unlimited, 12th Man for Texas.
It's a discretionary fund in which you can raise the money and you can distribute the funds the way you see fit.
And what happens, there's oversight. So you have people from, whether it's trustees or whoever that is, they're on this board along with people outside the school, which is so important.
Right.
And you can raise
checks and balances.
That's right. And they're also, when you do it that way, there's also this tax write-off because you're giving it to the school. But this is how you raise money. Hard to believe with a place that shut our program down, we had no foundation. Now, we had one that was called the Education Foundation. That's not athletics, football foundation. We had no foundation. So immediately I start trying to put this foundation together with this group of guys. It was a big concession when we were allowed to have the foundation, and that'll be in the movie when I tell you how we actually got it. But we did get it. That's when Hatton Smith and Hatton's a great fundraiser. These guys went out, used their good name. The people of Birmingham who believed how important UAB was helped give us money to go build this facility that I got to help design, that I was selling to these players. And like I always said, if we don't get a facility, you're going to find me over in a ditch somewhere, because I'm saying we're going to have a facility. So we got renderings, we're drawings, we're showing these guys, we're raising money. And we, in the end, and I can't give you the exacts, but we raised, it was a $25 million facility that we added a pavilion to. I said, look, we have nowhere to go in inclement weather.
Right.
You remember the PE gym sitting over there?
Sure.
That was also
Bell Gym.
Bell Gym used
Yep.
by volleyball. Basketball was their second gym. I still remember we had not had any rain or lightning or anything, and we're playing Middle Tennessee. We're 4-2. We miss every day of practice that week. We have nowhere to go.
Wow.
And we don't even get to practice that week, because in lightning, 10 mile off lightning, you're supposed to go in.
Right.
So we had nowhere to go in that 14 season. So, we come up with this idea for this covered pavilion. Jan Cowart, who played at Auburn, did all that great work at Clemson. We come up with this idea for this pavilion. So we raise this money for this facility, and we're out recruiting junior college players. Facility we don't get till 17, which we can discuss, but we're going through this process of trying to recruit these players and build this facility.
All right, I want to bring up one name, because I know I give him heck all the time, but I love him to death, and I know he's a very good friend of yours, and I think he was important in this process, especially with the foundation and things of that nature, and that's Coach Jack Crow, a UAB guy. Obviously, he was an offensive coordinator for Pat Dye. He was a head coach at Arkansas. Just a first-class individual, and again, I just want you to touch on how much Jack meant to this process.
Yeah, I love Jack, and him and Jimmy Lee are two of my favorite people. Of course, all those guys are so important. But so I get a call. The program is just, Ray Watts has just announced the program's back. I really have no idea what I'm doing. I'm going to I'm trying to get coaches, and what are we going to do? When are we going to meet? And I get a call from Jack. In fact, I'm driving back to Piedmont. I was there during the week, driving home on the weekend, and I'm driving back, and Jack Crow calls me. He says, hey, I've been with a bunch of Auburn guys. That program's not going to last. And laughs, or that's what they think. I said, Jack, it is going to last. I've got to make it last. He said, well, I'll be at your office Monday. So Jack and I, and if you were ever at the Southside Waffle House, if you would remember Southside Waffle House.
Yep. A lot of early mornings there at the Southside.
So Jack
Waffle
and
House.
I would meet. I'm up at 3 a.m. I'm up at 3:30 for ideas. So he was my idea guy. Jack, head coach at Arkansas. I followed him at Jack State.
Yep.
He is a UAB grad. That's what many people don't know. Loves UAB. Has retired to Birmingham. And so he was a great sounding board for me. So we might have met every day about, all right, Jack, we got to come up with a foundation. Ideas, just so many great things that he brought to the table, and he was really part of everything I did all the way through.
All right, so the foundation gets set, and you start. Not only are you dealing with, it would be enough pressure to me as an outsider looking at this whole situation, the pressure of trying to build yourself a roster to be competitive, but meanwhile, you still don't have the facilities. You're playing in a dilapidated Legion field. It's a cavernous stadium that even on a great attendance day, it's so dadgum big.
Yep.
It doesn't look like it's a home field advantage at all, because people are so far away from the action. Take us through that thought process of building that facility and then potentially getting maybe a stadium down the road.
Well, as we're raising the money, the first thing we're doing is going, okay, what could this facility look like? So it looks like we're going to be able to raise enough, and I think it was, $15 million at the time to build this facility. Then it was, okay, how can we use the space the best? All right, we got to have a team room. We got to have a staff room. We're going to take some offices and let the players meet in those offices. All these ideas. And of course, I'd been a high school coach. I'd been part of building facilities. I'd been part of doing turf. We built the new facility at South. And that was that's one we say about the good Lord being part of this, going in with Joey and getting to be part of that facility building So that gave me so many ideas of how could we do it. Like, let's take the offense and defensive coordinators and make those also the O&D staff room. So my office at South was also where I met with the defensive staff as a defense coordinator at South, things like that. So we came up with these ideas, and I'm like, look, we've got to come up with a way for an indoor. Well, at that time, and now no telling, right, what an indoor would cost, but we were talking about 20-something million, more as much as the facility. I get Jan Cowart, who had helped Clemson. You know, he's helping us design. We go with his firm. He was a guy that played college football. And I'm saying, we got to come up with a facility. I remember telling Hatton and Tommy and those guys, we got to build an indoor. And they're like, are you kidding? I mean, what are you talking about, an indoor? We're just getting you enough so you can have a building. I said, we got to have something. And he laughs and says, well, we got a flat roof, and we built for the equestrian at Auburn. I went, are you? No, man, we got to be able to kick the ball. And I said, well, could you build it the same height? Because I'd built an indoor at Prattville, even though it was very small. I said, could we build it the height and just not put the walls on it? That starts this conversation. The guys from Legacy, give them credit. They had done the Civic Center. And so as we're going, bring those guys in, and they decide they'll do the naming rights. And we built that building for $5 million.
Wow.
No, never been a pavilion. That was the first one of its kind in the whole country.
Yeah, and now when you look around, I mean, South Alabama was quickly behind it, and a lot of Hewitt-Trussville High School built a smaller version of that a couple of years ago. So, yeah, I mean, you guys were on the forefront.
Yeah, it was just it was a miraculous thing, and I knew I wanted it attached. One of the things I had at Jack State when I followed Jack, I could walk out of in the end zone was our building. I could walk out on that porch. I used that so much in recruiting. We'd go on the porch. You could look out on the stadium. Well, I didn't have a stadium, but I knew I could walk out of my office on the corner, look down as players are working out, bring recruits out there, and then we built a catwalk across the top, a walkway. You could go out, watch people working, all these good things. It really gave us almost like a stadium that we didn't have. So the facility was so good, we raised all the money. Now think about this. Zero money from the school.
Zero.
Not
one dime.
Not one dime. Now, we did get some help with some really good folks that helped us with, as we were designing it and facilities. And so I'm sure we had some costs there. So I should not say zero, because there were some guys that we got them that did planning and things like that on campus. So that we did get that. Now, I don't know if we were paying for that out of money raised, but I don't think so. So, got to give the school some credit. One other thing that happened as we were bringing the program back, even though Dr. Watts had said, let's bring it back, the school, they still made the students vote. Now, the students had to vote to put a fee on themselves to allow football, and we ended up putting bowling and rifle because they got cut too. But there was a student fee voted. I can't remember. It seems like it was like 90% or whatever. But they voted overwhelmingly to give their own money to bring football back. So that also happened when we were first bringing it back. So there's so many stories. There's so many people stepped up. The foundation that went and raised this money just to get us to have a chance.
Smart Bank, another great company that I know you've been affiliated with for some time. Great sponsor of this program.
Yeah, and I get this a lot. Well, Smart Bank, I'm just now hearing about those guys. They started in Sevierville. They were very involved in Dollywood, if you've been to Dollywood, and they've moved to Alabama, small town banking feel, but with all the amenities of a big bank. Those guys are great sponsors. We appreciate them.
Yeah, we appreciate Smart Bank being a part of this program. Okay, so we've talked about the facilities. We'll get to the stadium a little bit later in the show. But let's go back to the fact that you've got this roster coming in. Well, you got a roster, coach, but you got to play somebody. So talk about the scheduling and how difficult that was going to be, and how much did Conference USA help you guys in regards to then you going out to try to get some money games?
Yeah, so immediately it was, okay, we're going to put you back in the conference. Everything's going to be the same. You start in 17, and I'm like, oh my gosh, we do a good job. And, the coaches did such a great job recruiting, and the weekends where we got those guys start becoming a family. We had 50-something junior college players. I still remember what a big stigma. And before I talk about, the schedule, a stigma on junior college players. And we just said we're not going to get guys that are bad human beings. A lot of them had great issues. Some of them were guys that maybe they were a late bloomer, and all of a sudden, they get into junior college or whatever. I mean, this was truly a melting pot from New York to Arizona to California to, we were always trying to find guys that had Southern roots. But these guys believed in us and what we were putting together. And, of course, I had one thing to say on that was playing time. You know, who's going to play your part in the movie, because there's going to be a movie about us, which we're still working on, and then you got a chance to play. You know, so that was the great sell. Come to this great academic institution in a place that loves football, you know, Alabama. So that was my selling point. Get these facilities. Yeah, so then it was, okay, let's go get some teams to play. Well, when you Conference USA and you got 4 games, luckily in my contract, I said I have to have a sign-off on who we're playing. You know,
Okay, that's big.
So we're all looking for a money game, you know, and so there's a really pretty simple formula. I made the mistake of saying I'll play the Green Bay Packers in one game. You know, I would have loved to have seen some of the lesser SEC schools, the bigger ones, you know, as you know, the Alabamas, the Georgias, the Tennessees, and of course Alabama's not going to play an in-state school, but these other guys would pay more than the other ones. So we're going to get the elite of the elite in SEC. Now let's go play one FCS team. Now, when I get there in 2014, we had Mississippi State, and if you remember, Dak Prescott, senior year.
Yep.
They're number 1 7 weeks in a row, play the heck out of them. It's a close game. Well, then I got to still play Arkansas with 3 big conference games. Not very smart, you know. 1 is plenty. So then I said, all right, I'll play 2 teams, even though we may not should beat
This
them.
is for 17.
Yes, I'm sorry, 17. So we said we're going to play an FCS school, preferably an in-state school, Alabama A&M, Alabama State, who's going to bring a really good crowd, be a great opener. Then we'll go play this SEC money game, and then we're going to try and find 2 other games that are at least we're on that level. You know, the Ball States of the world, those kind of people really were inferior as a starter, but at least we could compete with as the years come on.
All right, so 17 happens, and you talked about how you had that in your contract about the scheduling. For those that do not understand scheduling, these games are like done a decade or so out.
Yep.
So you had to clear the schedule off the 2 years that the program was dark. And then you come back, even those money games, how difficult was it for you and the athletic department to be able to try to find somebody?
Well, you know, I think people were lining up to try and get to us because they thought it was a win.
Right.
You know, an FBS win. But it was not easy. You know, there was juggling going on. I think there was people I'm sure as soon as they heard there was a chance, because, you know, that started in that 15, and I'm having to hold my ground. You know, I don't want to play Florida and Houston. You know, all right, you can get Florida, but I don't want to play Houston too. And so we were able to get a schedule. And, of course, that was kind of a work in progress, but we were able to get what I consider at least a solid schedule. You know, and I still remember that fall of 15, we had about 37 guys working out. I mean, and just – I still remember that name, 30-something guys. My son Jacob decides he's going to play, and I'm like, Lord help us. You know, I got to get some players. The spring, so that spring of 16, we had about 60 players. You know, we had gotten some of our JUCO guys in, but we had – now think, you know, a normal roster going in the summer is 120. Mm-hmm. So we were at 60 going into that. I think it was 58, to be honest. 58 going into that first spring that's an actual spring, getting ready.
Unbelievable. Donahue Chevrolet, you drive a very nice Tahoe each and every week. I see you in that, and I know that is just one of the very few and great vehicles that they have there at Donahue Chevrolet.
Yeah, I mean, Chevy obviously is just a staple in our culture of great products, and Donahue does such a great job. Always got specials. You know, we used to talk about that a lot, but you can go in there and you're going to find some kind of special going on, and of course, first responders, military, college students, they're always got deals they're working on. So go check our guys out at Donahue Chevrolet.
The emotions going through yourself, your family, obviously your family of players, your coaches, as you get ready for that first kickoff on the return. Just take us through that moment and some of the fond memories that you have on that very special game.
Yeah, I think, I've always, I love the training and watch this group really start turning in and get these, a guy's got a labrum in a knee and we're starting to get guys well. We really look the part, because I've said, hey, let's try and go at least look the part. We're going to get out of these junior college players. So we really did look the part. The hardest thing with that group was these junior college guys had one goal. That's just to get out of junior college. So, I say it was really a team of mercenaries. You know, this is not about getting yours. Become a team, become a family. So, you know, really just getting these guys, you got to make the grades. We're at a really good academic school. So really doing all that, and the staff did such a great job. So here we are. We're getting close. So what I decided in the fall of 16 was we would practice 3 days a week. Tuesday, Thursday, Saturday. We would train like crazy. Saturday would be a scrimmage. Every Saturday would be a game for us against each other. You know, grill out some hamburgers afterwards, you know, because how do you keep their interest? We're going to take 2 open dates like you would in a season. You know, of course, 1, but we took 2 where we can recruit, go to class. You know, so really that worked out so good. We had a scrimmage in front of the school during 16. Now we're in that spring going into 17, and now we're getting ready. So that summer, going into that fall of 17, they come out with the predictions and where you rank. So there's 130 teams. Coach Vincent ended up stealing that this year at Monroe. But they come out and we're 130th out of 130. And, you know, we're picked, I think, to win 1.5 games. Jimmy Lee always tells me that. I don't know about the half game, but he said he felt like we could at least beat that. But, I mean, that's where you're thought. You've not had a program. You're coming from nothing. And, you know, so we create the shirt, you know, that says on the front, it says number 130. On the back, though, it said they don't know. Because they didn't know how hard we'd been working. They didn't know we'd become a team and a family. So now we're getting ready for that first kickoff against Alabama A&M. And, you know, it was a UAB record, 48,000 plus there. It was really unbelievable to come from nothing, to bring this thing back, to go out there together. Of course, you know, I knew there was more games to come and tough opponents on the road, but that doesn't get much better than that.
No, it doesn't. And not to mention the fact that nationally speaking, just a few years prior, UAB was the butt of all the jokes, and then all of a sudden it's back. And then to see the outpouring of affection, not only the business leaders in the community that stepped up and wrote checks to make it happen, you had a student body that voted for the student fees to help fund the portion of the football program coming back, and seeing it all come to fruition that night. I know that no matter what the outcome was going to be, it was always going to be a very special night for you.
Well, you know, we came up with the name The Return. You know, it was just such a great thing. So everything we did was hashtag The Return, you know, and so that bringing it back, but bringing it back the right way, you know, and I always say through the grace of God, you know, we won 8 games that year. We get bowl eligible. We make a trip to the Bahamas. But that team, and, you know, those guys that stayed, you know, the Tevin Cruz, Shaq Jones, all those guys, Darius Williams, you know, who's still playing in the NFL, who's a walk-on. You know, those guys that believed in us, that stayed, that fought. Man, what a great story. And, you know, just tells you so much about those guys and how much they loved UAB. And, you know, and also just the average fans that gave whatever. You know, so many people gave to allow us to come back and help us build that facility that, you know, allowed us to have a program.
Another great story is the Global Canine Protection Group. And for those that do not know their story, they're a great sponsor here on the program, Coach. But, man, what they do, and they're an Alabama-based company. Yeah,
based out of Auburn, Alabama. And there's nobody in the country doing what they're doing. They do canine security at Delta and American and these companies. They're at NFL teams like the San Francisco 49ers. They're at baseball, and they're doing that, you know, out in the parking lot where they're the dogs are sniffing for bombs and guns, but they're also got dogs in the stands, so they're keeping us safe. They do a great job, and it's run by veterans, which makes it even cooler.
All right, Coach. So the team comes back, and now you're off and running. How quickly, once the return of the program, I know it had always been a conversation. I've covered it for many times about the potential of building a dome stadium in Birmingham. We had the MAPS vote that got voted down. Legion Field, they took the upper deck down. Legion Field, UAB continued to play there. Some high schools continued to play there. But how quickly did you see that it could come to fruition in regards to a new downtown stadium once the return happened?
Yeah, and this is such a great story because there's so many people that got involved in that. But we had, I said, the city, the county, the state, UAB, all these people stepped up. But what was going on, and it was not that we were against the dome, but think about it, even at this time, the price tag on a dome was $1 billion with a B. And I said, guys, you can't get enough money to do. Let's quit talking about a dome. So one of the things that happened, we were doing our every Friday, you know, you've heard me tell the story of going run these stadium steps. And we would eat breakfast over there at the Sheraton, all the players, so cool memories of frozen steps and going and fighting. And this is when we're not even playing in 16. And so I started asking some of these city councilmen to come over there and let's talk about a regular stadium versus a dome. And, could we do something and I didn't know what that money was going to be. I had to leave that to others. That's why it was a team effort. But what if we built a really nice 40-something thousand, 50,000 seat stadium and they got to see, let's go to Baylor. Let's go look at these new stadiums that are being done that are open air. We're in Alabama. Not that we wouldn't love to have a close. And then I had, being a former high school coach and I'd been on the board and played in state championships, and I knew we would have a chance to get back on that, bringing games back to Birmingham, which is where they really should be.
Yeah.
And all the things that could happen, concerts and all those things. We had Miller Gorey there, Gorey Construction, which is a worldwide, one time they were the number one construction company in the world. Robert Simon, who's a guy who helps put deals together. But Miller Gorey, this was a dream of his to help put a stadium in town. So it wasn't just me, I was part of that, but this group of people who dreamed about this stadium, that we needed something new, the BJCC, all these people coming together to get this stadium.
Let me go back to, so you upgrade the facilities, and now there's on paper the thought of bringing a brand new facility downtown to host your home football games. Needless to say, that probably assisted your recruiting tremendously.
There's no doubt. So if the Weston that sits by the Sheridan was where we would recruit. So we would stay at Sheridan for our ball games. We would stay at Weston. So we would look out and talk about, kind of like I did before with my facility, hey, we could have a stadium right here. Mm-hmm. Now, this really starts coming about in 17. There was so much excitement. There were so many good things happening. And there we have this good year. And it just all snowballed together. And we're really getting close to those talks as we're going to the Bahamas. And I can remember it, of these groups all coming together. And we had so many helpers, Jabbo Wagner. I mean, I want to talk about all these folks that pulled this off. Mayor Woodfin, who was part of that and helped believe in this vision. All these people believed in that. And then that was the next step for us as I was recruiting these guys, said, man, this thing's real. We got a new facility with a pavilion beside it. We got this great campus. We're in Birmingham, the football capital of the South. Oh, and we're going to get a new stadium.
Fired up players, right?
They really were. Fired up players, fired up coaches, fired up people. And I think that was always my thing with Birmingham. Let's quit saying what we can't do. Let's quit, we're from here.
Yeah.
We know the people of Alabama. We know the people, how great of folks these are. And I would have people come to me, Coach, you believed in us. You didn't quit on us. I'm like, man, these are the people I grew up with.
So let me ask you this. This is a typical Landrum Roberts off-the-wall question. In regards to the stadium, what was the one thing that you might have had input on, maybe a quirky design or something that ultimately did get built in the stadium?
The thing for me from a fan standpoint, I'd gotten to go, I was able to get the Coach of the Year award, and they went to San Francisco. Remember I told you about Banowski. He ran the foundation. And so we're up top. As Alabama and Clemson are playing, and they had the roll-up doors at the new San Francisco 49er Stadium.
Oh, Levi Stadium.
Yeah, I said, okay, we want that. So that was something kind of quirky. Now my locker room, I helped design my coach's office.
I give you credit for that. I remind everybody that, because I'll never forget when I had an opportunity. You took me and Landrum around right after the stadium got moved in, and you were very proud of the locker rooms. And it's one of those common sense things of building full-size locker rooms where you could host multiple events, i.e. a state football championship.
Yeah, this was all built for the very reason of, I didn't even know about the USFL.
Right.
But let's set this up so how can we do this? How can it be multi-use? How can you bring in concerts? How can you have other teams play? How can you have the visitors got a good locker room? As we're playing that first year, I'm like, wait a second, I made a too nice locker room for the visitor. But it was all purposeful. It was all planned out. It was all to be multi-use, to build a protective stadium.
Well, it has been a great 3-episode arc, as we call it in the business, talking about your career, the shutdown of the program, the resurrection of the program. It's just, for those that did not know this story before 2 weeks ago when we started talking about it, I hope you've enjoyed it as much as, I was reporting on it. I was a part of it being a UAB alum. So it was just, there were things that I did not know. and I was trying to cover it, Coach.
Yeah.
So it's
Yeah.
just it's a great story. About
so many
what
people
happened.
that made it happen, and it was really a great story. Great, and I have people tell me all the time, and in the history of college football, there's really nothing quite like that. So it's really cool to be a part of that.
There is no doubt about it. Thanks for tuning in. This has been the Coach Bill Clark Show, presented by Dr. Pepper and Buffalo Rock. For Molly Robinson, Coach Bill Clark, I'm Pat Smith. Landry will be back with us next week. Have a great week here on Jocks 94.5.
This has been the Bill Clark Show, presented